Hey everybody, welcome to or back to my channel, My Kind of Stuff, and today we are wrapping up the second half of October for me. If you missed my mid-month wrap-up, I will make sure I link it down below because I read so many books this month that one video was just going to be way too long. So I did one video halfway through the month, and now I'm going to be talking about all the books I read for the second half of the month of October. So, first off, we have Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert. I got this one from Book of the Month, knowing absolutely nothing about it, but I ended up really enjoying it. This is a psychological thriller. So, in this book, we follow this serial killer who calls himself Father Silence, who was dressing up as a priest and luring children into his playhouse. When they finally found this house, they ended up finding 19 bodies in it and one child that survived. That child is now in an asylum for the criminally insane. He has multiple personalities that are kind of like a defense mechanism from everything that he went through and the trauma that he survived from his own mother before even ending up in this house of horrors. Then we jump to 2 decades later, and Father Silence is being put to death for his crimes. But the morning of his death, the original officer that made the arrest on him is found dead in his home. And there's a new serial killer now trying to take claim of these murders. So we start following Tessa, who is the daughter of the officer who was found dead. She's actually a detective herself, and she is now very invested in figuring out what is going on. During all of this, her child actually ends up being one of the children that is abducted by this new serial killer calling himself the Outcast. Tessa herself, though, is still dealing with a lot of trauma from her childhood, most of it revolving around the original case that her father was working. She was very invested in it emotionally at the time and kept sneaking along on cases when her dad was investigating or looking at all of his notes and stuff at home. So she's still dealing with her trauma from that and kind of doesn't have all of her memories from her childhood because of this. So she kind of teams up with the lone survivor from the original serial killer. And obviously, it's kind of hard to work with him because he has multiple personalities and also is blocking things out because of trauma. Her husband is a therapist, though, and he kind of helps her get through to him. They end up taking him out and bringing him to the house where everything originally happened to try and trigger his memories. And it was just a lot of fun. Took a lot of twists that I wasn't necessarily expecting. And I just love unreliable narrators and I think it's very interesting when they do characters with trauma or blackouts of certain points in time in their life or multiple personalities or anything like that. Um, that's one of my favorite tropes in a psychological thriller. So this one, I absolutely ate it up. I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. This is book 1 in the Six of Crows series. I think it's a duology. And then in this one, we are following kind of this motley crew of people. Some of them have magic powers, some of them are spies or convicts and things like that. So it's very interesting. The main guy running the show, his name is Kaz. He's this criminal prodigy that does all these sleight of hand tricks and things. And it was really interesting, really fun seeing this crew work together because they were all so different and came from such different backgrounds. The fact that some people had magic and some didn't was definitely a big point of tension in the book. Basically, they go to do this epically huge heist to get a bunch of money to kind of hopefully go live their own lives separately. And of course, things don't go to plan and they end up saving the world from destruction. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It is definitely YA, and I think that's why it didn't get a 5 star for me. YA always just feels like it's missing something for me. But still, overall, I enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to read book 2. Next up, I read Try Not to Die at Grandma's House. This is like an interactive choose your own adventure horror for adults. I had so much fun with this book. I gave it 4 stars. I have a whole entire spoilery blog on my channel, which I will make sure I link down below if you want to watch it. I go through all of the book, like decision by decision, and kind of show you guys what happens. And there's only one path to the end of the story. So like if you make a wrong decision, you die in some ridiculous manner and end up back to the last decision you made and you have to like pick something else, kind of try again. It was a lot of fun, a very enjoyable experience on the Kindle, because when you got to the points where you had to make a decision, it would give you like links you could click on, and then it would just jump to that page. If you ended up dying, it would show a link that says try again, and you click that, and it would take you back to your last decision. So it was very easy to navigate on the Kindle, and I just had a lot of fun with it. And I'm going to be continuing this series, and I'm going to do, like, there's 12 books, so I'm going to do 12 vlogs for it, reading and interacting with all 12 of the books. That being said, I also read Try Not to Die in Bright Side, which is the second book in this series. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I wasn't quite as invested in the story, but I think next week it comes out. I have a whole nother spoiler filled vlog, so make sure you watch out for that. So I'm not going to go into detail too much on those 2 books here, but just know that they were fun. They were a wild time. And if you loved choose your own adventure like Goosebumps and stuff, growing up as a kid, I definitely suggest picking these up because they were just a lot of fun and they were just a short, quick read. I also read Ashes in the Star-Cursed King, which is book 2 in the Nightborn duet, which is part of the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I don't know why I put off reading this for as long as I did. I gave this one 5 stars. It was so much fun. The drama, the tension. Like, our 2 main characters, even though they're like together, they don't really get together until like 350 pages in or more. So it was just so much fun. I just absolutely love the tension. And I can't really talk too much about this because it is book 2 of a series, so it will definitely spoil things that happened in book 1, because book 1 ends on a major cliffhanger. But just know that I absolutely loved it. If you liked book 1, you're definitely going to like this one too. Next up, I read The Butcher Game by Elena Urquhart. This is book 2 of the Dr. Ren Muller series. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. We actually read this as part of our Love and Horror book club. This was our October pick. So if you guys want to join the book club, the link to the Discord is down below. We kind of rotate between reading a horror book and a dark romance every month. But it's October, it is spooky season, so we went with, I guess not really a horror, this is more a thriller, but it's a lot of fun. Again, hard to talk too much about this because this is book 2 of a series, but we basically follow a medical examiner who is trying to help catch the Bayou Butcher. And both books, you kind of learn a lot of the backstory about like why she is so invested in this and how their lives are connected and intertwined. The cliffhanger at the end of this one was pretty darn good. The way the book 1 ends really set up book 2 nicely, but book 2 took a long time to get going. Like, it was over 30% of the way into this book before the serial killer and our main character, the forensic pathologist here, to like even really have any sort of like interaction or reason to like start this cat and mouse game again. So it took a lot of setup, but the cliffhanger at the end here really set up well for, I think, another book in the series. Maybe following a slightly different character, but definitely a continuation of this world. I don't know that that's for sure happening. I haven't seen that set anywhere by the author, but it was set up in such a way that I think that would be easily done, and I am very intrigued and excited if that does end up happening. And then I read The Reckoning, which is book 3 in the Zodiac Academy series by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. I mean, this is everywhere, right? I feel like most people know what it's about. We have two girls that are heirs to the celestial throne. They just find out about all of this and are kind of thrown into this magical academy where all of the other kids that are kind of had thought they were going to be the new heirs to the throne are really making their life hell. But I love the relationships that they are forging in these books as they're kind of settling into the world and the school. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. I definitely liked it way more than book 1. I think book 1 I gave 3 stars. Book 2 I gave 4. This was definitely a 5-star for me. They are spicy, they are fun, they are funny, they are dramatic, like way overly dramatic, drama for the sake of drama. These are a total popcorn read. Don't go into it taking it too seriously. I think if you do, you'll be very disappointed, but these are just such a fun time, and I'm really excited to continue this series. These are chunky books too, and I've read books 2 and 3 of the series this month alone, so yeah, I'm invested now. Next up, I read Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. We basically follow a group of authors who get invited to this house for a Halloween interview by this like huge social media horror guy. He like I don't know. I don't really understand fully what he does, but he basically like brought horror alive again in this fictional world. Like he made it cool and mainstream again. But upon going to this house for this interview, they find out some weird things about the house, about each other, and then they all go home back to living their separate lives, except for something about this house just keeps calling to them. They end up all writing like almost the same identical novel about this house. Um, and it's basically like their fight for survival after this like stupid publicity stunt. I think it was really fun and unique and interesting, but at a little over 400 pages, I think it was a little too long. Um, there were definitely some like really cool, intense parts, but a lot of the time, there was just a lot of dialogue in between, and I feel like it could have been summed up maybe a little bit quicker, so that's why it only got 4 stars from me, but otherwise it was still really enjoyable. Next up, I read Briar Dark by S.A. Herring. This one was almost like cosmic horror-esque. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Um, I I don't know if cosmic horror is for me. I'm kind of new to it, and it maybe I just haven't read enough of it yet, but it kind of confuses me. And that's how I felt towards the end of this book. We follow this group of scientists. They go on this expedition into the wilderness. They come across this hiker who is dead and hung up in a tree. All of a sudden, their emergency phone can't call out for help or get signal. They kind of start wandering off to like figure out their surroundings, but their maps suddenly start not making sense, and like there's extra mountain peaks that don't actually exist, and then they go back to where the body was and the body's just vanished. It's no longer hanging up in the tree, and just all kinds of weird things are happening. They finally make it to the cabin that they are going to stay at while they're out there conducting their experiments. And just more and more strange things keep happening. One of the characters is like having visions of bugs, and she had been going to therapy for this in the past because they weren't actually there, but now all of a sudden she does start like having actual beetles like in her hair and on her clothes, and like it's just really gross and creepy, and there's definitely some really well done creepy elements in here, but all the twists and turns that it takes because it's more cosmic-esque, I just felt really confused towards the very end of the book because like just when you think one thing was happening, it would like take a total 360, and like all of a sudden like something totally different is going down, and like it just kept twisting and turning, and it was a little too much for me. um but it tried. It tried. It definitely had some really gross and creepy eerie elements, but I think of just a few too many twists towards the end for it to like really feel like it was an intentional ending. Next up, I read Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It probably would have been a 5 star for me, but the beginning of the book felt a little pretentious. We follow Frankie in this book, and she is trans. Um, there is this transphobic woman that ends up bombing Frankie's place of work, and like her coping mechanisms are like binge drinking and pushing away her friends and basically having sex with a bunch of strangers and just very unhealthy coping mechanisms. She ends up meeting Venya, and they kind of hit it off and start forging a friendship and relationship until Frankie starts feeling like something is off, and she starts digging into Venya's past and finds out some secrets that could tear them apart. But like the further she digs into this, the more like sinister and depraved it ends up becoming. Like there's a bunch of conspiracies, and this book is very like shocking and grotesque, a lot of body horror, a lot of very, very disgusting, disturbing body horror. So this is definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. That stuff doesn't really bother me, but I know that it will bother a lot of people. So definitely like check your triggers before getting into this one. But overall, I still had a really good time with it, and I was just blown away by the end. It was just so weird and disgusting and disturbing. Next up, I read Done and Dusted by Layla Sage. This is book 1 of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought this was pretty darn cute. We follow Clementine, who is a professional at the rodeo. She does barrel racing for horses until she has a tragic accident that really scares her, throws her for a loop. She's afraid to get back on the horse, so she ends up moving back home. Um, she's afraid to tell her family like what happened and what's going on. She ends up working at the family's ranch for a while she's staying there, and ends up reconnecting with her brother's childhood best friend, because he works on the ranch, but he also runs a bar in town, and he was kind of always like the bad boy growing up, so she doesn't really think much of him. But as they work together and learn more about each other, she learns to kind of love him and respect him, and finds out that he is definitely not the man that he once was. And just seeing their relationship grow and bloom was really cute. The push and pull of him being her brother's best friend, I absolutely love because it just adds that little bit of tension between them, or I guess added tension because he was also known as the bad boy. So she's like immediately in her head, like, nope, 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 don't want anything to do with him. Ends up learning that he's really grown into such an amazing man. He ends up really helping her overcome her fear of getting back in the saddle and learning to ride again. So that was really cute, just watching him help her grow I had a lot of fun with it. It was adorable, and I'm excited to read the next book. Next up, I read Too Hot to Handle by Tessa Bailey. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I'm finding out that Tessa Bailey's older works are not for me. I like her newer stuff. Basically anything from It Happened One Summer forward, I've enjoyed. But now I've read a couple of her older works, like trying to complete her backlog, and I've not been loving them that much. This is book one of the Romancing the Clarkson series. There's 4 books in it. I do own them all. I will read them all. I didn't absolutely hate it, but like there were definitely like some eye rolling moments in here for me. It is very insta lovey on his end. And I guess technically on both of their ends, but he definitely falls first. But like she just uproots her life for this man that she has only met and known for like less than a week. They've spent a few hours together for a few days, and like she's like, that's it, dropping everything. This man is my forever now. And that part is what turned me off. Like the spice was there, their banter and their moments together were really cute and funny and typical Tessa Bailey, but like just that insta love aspect just made me eye roll so hard, and that's why I got 2 stars for me. And last up, I read That Sick Love by Jessie Hall. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I'm not going to talk about it a lot here because I am doing a whole Jessie Hall reading vlog that will be coming out at the end of next week. So you'll be able to check out all of my detailed thoughts there. But this was dark and disturbing and messed up, and I I ate it up. This is another one where you definitely want to check your triggers because there are a lot of very dark topics discussed in this one. A lot of sexual assault, religious topics, a lot of primal play. Uh, just some very messed up things happening in this book. So I understand that it is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I had a really good time with it. And yeah, definitely check out that vlog next week if you want more detailed thoughts. All right, guys, those were the 11 books that I read for the second half of October. I can't believe how much I've read this month. It is insane. I've just really been enjoying most of what I was reading, and it just makes me want to read more. I feel like last month was a decent reading month for me, but not, it could have been better, but I think a lot of the books I really didn't like. It was a really rough month for me, as enjoyment level wise, but I really liked a majority of what I read this month, and I think that that really makes all the difference in reading. So yeah, let me know down below what your standout read of the month was because I am always up for more recommendations. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to my channel if you're new so you don't miss out on future content, and I will catch you guys all in the next video. Bye!